Okay. Corbin,
Here.
Alana. I don't see. Bonnie. Present. Casey,
Here.
David. Also don't see. Chris.
Here.
Adam,
I'm here.
Adrian. See Adrian. Aaron is absent. Sabrina,
Here.
Allie,
Here.
Suen,
Here.
Jonathan,
Here.
Matt,
Present.
Patty,
Here.
and Jessica.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm gonna open it up to public comments. We have Matt. Started, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, yeah, I'm Matt Schick. I'm here again. Quick update is that there is, I think, no update. I've heard at least nothing's been communicated to me. Nothing's changed, nothing's happened. This might be the last time I'm here because I think I'm exhausted this avenue. So I believe where things stand at this point is that the Parks Department issues permit for film companies to take off in Portland parks, fly into residential neighborhoods, film. This includes, for example, Memorial Day weekend, Saturday, beautiful sunny day, 8 o'clock in the morning, drone hovering over your house with a big camera. We're not talking about those little whiny drones that we all know. This is a large drone. And then continuing throughout the day for what I think it was 8 hours total that day. So anyway, and not only does the Parks Department go along with this, they, get permit money from it. So I guess there's no incentive for them to change anything. I've got 1 minute left. I can't really explain why this notification requirement from Portland Prosper doesn't really exist. So I'm not going to go into that. Again, nothing has changed. That's just sort of the state of things. So next Memorial Day weekend, beautiful day. It's possible there will be a large drone hovering over your yard, courtesy of the Parks Department. Does anyone have a question for me? Because I haven't heard a piece from anybody on the board about anything. Got 30 seconds left. If anybody wants to ask me a question, I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I was gonna have one last thing to say.
Okay, go
At the
ahead.
end of the third,
Please go ahead.
if there are any questions, no questions. Okay, so yes, no questions from the board, no assistance from the board. And that's where we are.
Thank you. So we actually did have a conversation at the Board of Affairs Working Group meeting. And I ended up looking into both Oregon and Portland state laws,
Mhm.
which actually allows for drone flying. And
Mhm.
so even if parks were to suspend drones from flying in their space,
Mhm.
it's not going to solve your problem of drones flying over your home.
Yes.
And so our advice would be you need to take this to City Hall. You need to take this to City Council because we have exhausted what we can do as a board at this level.
Mhm.
So that is my advice to you.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, but the drones can still take off in parks and fly over residential neighborhoods, that and parks will issue permits for those, that's where we are. Nothing about that has changed.
It won't change until you take it up to the leaders or the power that be, which would be City Council, because this is a Portland at large role, not just.
Portland Bureau of Transportation has different rules, and you can look those up if you want. State law, federal law allows municipalities to regulate where and when drones are allowed to take off.
Absolutely.
Yes,
So
and
it
so that's what I'm
allows, it
requesting.
allows municipalities, not just departments and municipalities. So that's why the advice is to talk to City Council about this.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Moving forward to general announcements. Any general announcements from board members?
I just have one general announcement. If folks have not seen yet, the governor's task force has released their 10 recommendations for improving downtown. There are some things within the 10 recommendations that may impact the Parks Bureau, specifically the use of rangers and what that impact that might have on the rest of the Parks Department and where rangers are utilized throughout parks. So if folks haven't had the chance to look at that yet, I just recommend looking at those task force recommendations.
Thank you. Other general announcements. All right, I'm gonna take 1 minute and take a break. Thank you. There any following up that you can cross with you? Got it? I'm just making sure. Appealing to staff. Is there any follow-up that can be said?
Yes, our contact information, we've been in
Okay,
communication.
all right, just making sure.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Are there any other general announcements? Thank you. Want to move towards the approval of November meeting minutes. Are there any corrections? We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
For seconds.
Great. Open it up for any comments, conversation, discussion. All those in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as they are, doesn't seem like there's any friendly amendments. If you can say aye or raise your hand. Aye. All those against accepting the November meeting minutes? Is that a legacy hand, Adam?
Yep, sorry, I'm trying to get it to go away.
No worries.
And
Anybody?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, and we have one abstention. Anybody else? All right, thank you so much. We're gonna move forward to
Who's abstaining?
Matt.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And we're gonna move forward to the director's report. Director Wong.
Thank you. So last month, it was requested that we provide updates on the city's government transition moving forward during my director's report. As we prepare for the Bureau's fiscal year 23-24 requested budget, I just wanted to share with the board how the city council's approved resolution of 37635, which is the resolution that approved the revised organizational chart, will influence the budget requests. So just a little bit of a recap. Upon approval of the city council's budget process, the new organizational chart will take effect on July 1, 2024, with the possibility of hiring an interim city administrator the next year. The interim city administrator would work closely with the current city council members who will oversee the new service areas until the new form of government officially launches in January 1st, 2025. It's a little bit complex and convoluted. I'll add that it is likely that our current council members and commissioners will likely appoint an interim deputy city administrator as well. So more to come on that as we learn more. The resolution 37635, as you know, added citywide operational natural area and tree management to the service area with Parks and Recreation and the Portland Children's Levy and City Arts. In the coming weeks and months, we will be working with BES and other bureaus to build a requested budget that's responsive to the city council resolution. And then city council and the mayor will finalize and approve the final budget this spring and early summer. I just want to note also that the approved resolution also acknowledged the ongoing work of Parks, BES, BPS, PBOT, and the Water Bureau to assess the natural resource service delivery and any potential process improvements. So despite the resolution having moved forward, we're going to continue that work. So I've together with Director Uchiyama, who oversees PES and is sort of the second biggest player in the conversation. And along with our project managers, Laura Lehman and Sheena Anderson, we've had several meetings to discuss our next steps, including Chris Caldwell, who was the facilitator with Catalysis, who's agreed to facilitate moving forward. So we're working on a roadmap and a draft work plan outline that we hope to share with you all very soon. In fact, I believe we are on the January parking lot agenda for next month. So you'll be hearing more about that soon. The other piece that impacts us is the single permitting authority. Also on November 1st, this city council hearing and resolution created a single permitting authority. There is a permit improvement sort of management team that's moving forward this work and is identifying their next set of milestones to create the single permitting authority. And so they've had some subject matter expert discovery sessions over the last 4 weeks, where they were identifying what is in and out of scope for the single permitting authority to complete the groundwork for further exploration and concrete ideas on who and how they're going to organize this new entity. And it also provided an opportunity for bureaus to provide best case scenarios for each of their work groups to be organized and operate in a new entity. I will say we have representation. Dan Gleason, who works for Urban Forestry, works directly under Casey Jokers, is a part of the project. So our interests are being heard. And what I'm hearing is that they understand that the urban forestry permitting function is more complex than some of the other permitting functions in some of our sister bureaus, because there's development, non-development, and then we also do customer service, et cetera. So there's a lot more layers. And so it's a great opportunity for that larger group to understand how complex it is and how interconnected it is, so that we're making good decisions that aren't going to impact our service to the community. Also in early December, they had an all-day work session. And my understanding is that some recommendations and options for the new structure will be shared with Michael Jordan, the CAO, shortly. I don't have much more on our end of what that looks like, but we can ask Urban Forestry to provide an update at some point, written or otherwise, if there's any important news to share. And then the third and final thing that I wanted to mention is that Kelly Torres and Commissioner Ryan has brought myself, Todd, several members of our team together with leadership from the Children's Levy and the City Arts Program for a retreat, for us to start talking about how we coalesce our various areas into this new service area and what that's going to look like, especially with a new deputy city administrator providing oversight. So we had the retreat last week, Friday, very expertly facilitated by a wonderful consultant. Really, it was lovely. We were like out on a ranch in Corbett and got fed, and it was lovely. And just the facilitation was top notch. They use an artist to help with the facilitation, and it's a really great way for people who learn and express their ideas differently to be engaged. So we're having those conversations, and when we have more to share or to get feedback on, we'll be circling back with you all. I'll just pause to see if anyone has any questions.
Looks like Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Director Long. I do have a question, but it isn't about what you just described. It's about something else in the director's report. Adrian, if your question is more germane to what the director just shared, I'm happy to yield to you if you want to go first.
That's fine. It was related to what was said. I just had a question if you had any inkling based upon what's been said so far, whether in general Bureau is going to be requested to make cuts, given that, so many factors, and that's why I asked the question. I mean, inflation, higher administrative costs with the new organization, et cetera, which would create sort of a very different and maybe more challenging paradigm in dividing up the pot differently. So I'm just wondering about what your insights are on that.
It's a great question. Todd's gonna take this one for me.
So we hope to get some guidance from the city budget office and the mayor this month, hopefully before the holidays. That was one of the reasons we delayed the budget advisory committee meeting, because we need the answers to your questions. And so we hope to get some more guidance this month. We'll hopefully be able to share that with you both at the BAC, and if we need to do during the director update, the next full board meeting. And so more to come, like we don't have answers on that yet. I will just note that Parks is in a fortunate position because of the Parks levy to continue and like stabilize services. So unspent funds from the Parks levy stay in the Parks levy account. We're able to carry them over into the next year. And so as we've ramped up services, we have some underspending the first couple of years, and that's allow us to actually continue and grow services in the coming years. Even though we might get some budget guidance that will be downward pressure.
Yeah, that's great to hear, be buffer in this more difficult time.
Right.
Great, thank you. Adam?
Great, thanks. So just so we can orient ourselves, I'm going to reference something on 7 and 8, page 7 and 8 of the director's report. First of all, a comment. A lot of this recreation program, especially during the school strike, is pretty incredible. So just wanted to commend you all on being able to absorb that. The second piece is, looks like we had very big upticks in swim lesson registrations and in Golden Ball this year. Were either of those programs at capacity?
For this year, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we've been able to increase staffing for those. And so Golden Ball is reflective of the additional staff we've been able to bring in, and we've been able to hire more teams. And so with aquatics, I would have to look at those comparables to.
But generally, we're continue to increase the service levels in the aquatics program. There's high demand out there.
Yeah, and I want to just remind everyone that we increased the salary for aquatic staff and dealt with a really tough recruitment landscape the summer before last. So it really just sort of changed the whole landscape in terms of how much we were able to actually hire the amount that we targeted, which was the first time we've been able to do that since 2018. And yeah, so that I think that the increase in capacity is just sort of natural.
Yeah, and the year before last, so this year, we offered swim lessons in both our outdoor and indoor pools. And the year before, we just offered them in our outdoor pools as a result of the staffing challenge. So we were able to expand the number of program offerings this past summer.
Thanks for the question, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. That information helps a lot.
Thank you, Suan.
How does that work with when we close the Mount Scott facility, or there's also pool? And so are these seasonal positions, or are we, when the question was about capacity, are we at full capacity? When we close the pool, our capacity is smaller, but then we have 100% on the other pools. Is that just balance out, or we cut staff and lessons.
We are not cutting staff.
Yeah.
Everyone is being reassigned to other pools and we're increasing the number of
Sessions.
class, sessions that are available at those other pools. So, losing Mount Scott will hurt, but Maxim and his team have really put together a great sort of plan on how to ameliorate to the best of our ability, those losses in service. So if you wanted to expand on that at all.
Yeah, and so it's exactly along those lines. So we still have the finite space and the pool spaces that we have remaining. And so we just continue to be creative in looking at it to where we might have group exercise, swim lessons and lap swim happening like simultaneously. We might go down and swim lanes so that we can make sure to accommodate additional programs in that same space. So we're really seeing where we've got that opportunity in tracking and staffing that we are maintaining to make sure.
It's a
that's-
delicate balance. And I'll also remind the board that we also made a decision to increase, let me see if I get this right. Expand the season at Pier and
Peninsula.
at Peninsula Park. So next summer, it'll be open longer. And then to add hours to Creston, right?
Longer at Peninsula.
I knew I was gonna
and
get this
Pier.
wrong.
Yeah. And then have longer hours at Peninsula because Peninsula is the only outdoor pool that actually has lights in there as well to make us.
So we're just trying to figure out any way that we can increase capacity, both with the loss of Columbia, the delay in getting North Portland Aquatic Center up and running, and now the loss of Mount Scott. So we're really trying to hustle to identify areas where we can increase capacity. Thank you. I knew I was gonna bungle that and I'm glad we're here.
It's it's always a moving equation.
Thanks. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? I thought I saw.
On any other report, are you still?
Go for it.
All right,
I'll try my best.
all right, so I've got a report question, but then a today question. So I understand that polling was done in November regarding the possibility of a new capital bond as well as renewing the levy option. Are we gonna see that next month? Later this month? The results of the polling?
Yeah, we're offering a special meeting next Tuesday.
Oh, that's what it's for.
At 9.
Okay, I didn't know that's what it was for. Right, yeah.
And if for some reason board members can't make that, we can do another special meeting. Even if it's a small number of people, we're happy to do that.
Okay, so my next,
We're just not, they're not ready to release this week.
Okay.
And so they'll be ready next week.
so my next question is probably then gonna wait till, the answer is gonna wait till then. With the governor saying no new taxes and the mayor saying no new taxes. Do we even bother with the results of a new capital bond? I mean, I understand that with no new taxes, at least we can renew the parsley. But does that mean the capital bond is off the table?
I think those would be decisions for the city council because city council makes the determination about referral of any ballot measure. And so those referrals are done through 3 votes on council.
Okay,
So
doesn't stop us trying.
I think we'll get more guidance. It's new information for, I'm sure, our commissioner and the
Yeah.
city council too. So we'll get new information, I'm sure, in the coming weeks about what it might mean.
And I'm pretty sure that the governor can't mandate no new taxes for the city of Portland.
I know, but
So,
or
there,
the county too, but it's.
there's that.
I believe there was
Then
something
you had a
about
second?
we should look at no new taxes, at least what some of the folks who were up on that panel said.
Was there another
No, that's.
second question?
Thank you. Thanks, Doug.
Is there addition to the report?
I'm sorry?
Are you gonna, is there?
No,
continuation?
I'm complete. I'm
Okay.
done. Sorry.
Director Alon.
I should
Wasn't
have
sure if
said,
there's a part 2.
It looks like that if you haven't RSVP'd to me yet, whether you will attend the December 19th meeting, please do so if you plan on attending, but it does look like we're at kind of the borderline as to whether or not it's going to be a public meeting. probably will be a public meeting and we'll give you at least 24 hours notice beforehand, which is the requirement for public meetings.
I have a clarifying question.
Yep.
In person or online or
Uh-huh.
hybrid? Okay, thank you.
Or if you wanted to do a hybrid, we're gonna be here.
Yeah, we could
make
set
Yeah,
up
we
a
could
room
do it
if
if
we wanted to.
But
Is that
Perfect.
supposed to be like part two of this meeting or?
It'll be specifically about polling results that we didn't have ready today because we won't know until next week.
And it would be timely for next week. We don't want to wait until January.
Michelle, did you send the invite or?
It has not been sent yet.
Oh,
We're
okay.
still getting RSVPs today, so,
Okay.
but it should be sent out.
Make sure you miss-
and we appreciate like it's short notice.
Yeah.
And so like Sarah and I can do a special, other time.
Briefing.
Just to make sure you get the information if you're interested, but can't make.
Yeah. Looks like we're moving, unless there's any other questions regarding the director's report. Suan?
Wasn't sure if that was in the director's report or it's in one of those 69 pages. We pay the services provided by fire rescue. There's something about we pay their services, safety, fire and rescue on the parks. On parks.
So when the community centers become emergency shelters, there was a talk in the letter about having to pick up the payment for fire and rescue to come in and help clean up and to manage.
I don't know that.
Not tracking it.
It's on one of those. Sorry.
One of the 69
Maybe I can look at it and then.
I was just curious, like what services do we have to put out fires when the park is fire? or-
Oh, no, actually, it's not, it's fire and police. So this is again for, and apologies. When the emergency sheltering occurred and became emergency shelters, there's a line that says Portland Fire and Portland Police were not able to provide consistent support after several calls from both facilities. Is that what you're talking about?
I'll find it. No, it's not.
That's not-
It has its own topic.
What do you
It
got?
has its own topic.
Or the sustainable future with that.
I think
Yes,
Jonathan
that's
had it, his hand up.
It's a
Sustainable
sustainable.
future.
Yeah.
The sustainable future with the polling consultant, the one that conducted a poll in November to evaluate the viability of the potential capital bond.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more on Saturday, on next week Tuesday. Okay.
Thank you. And I think I got a cue that Jonathan, did you have your hand up?
I did. I was just asking for confirmation. Did you say if we can't attend on Tuesday for the bond polling meeting, we just receive a recap or there'll be an alternate date for that?
Email me if you are interested, so we can determine whether or not there will be a second meeting.
Okay,
which we
gotcha.
can-
I
Which we
think-
can schedule.
I lowered my hand because I think I can make it work, but so kind of
Yeah.
move, but clarity appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, unless there's any other questions. Thank you so much, Director Long. We're moving forward with the working group reports. So Board Affairs Working Group. Any questions for them or any statements that the Board Affairs Working Group would like to make?
Actually, I have a question. Where do you want to put the draft letter to the Multnomah County Commissioners?
Probably right here.
Okay. If there aren't any questions on the report itself, and I'll yield the floor to our co-chairs. Enclosed in the packet was a draft letter to the Multnomah County Commissioners regarding converting community centers into emergency shelters. And I think we were looking for a vote to allow us to send that on.
Wonderful. It's near the end of the report. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to read it. But I would like to open up the floor if there's any questions or concerns. All right, do we have a motion?
I would move that we send the letter from the board to the Multnomah County Commission.
Do you have a second? Or seconds? Second. Any discussion?
Right. Folks need a minute to look it over or read good.
Does anybody need any time to look it over? Should we move forward with a vote? All those in favor of moving or sending this letter to Monoma County Commissioners? All those in favor? Steady, so Michelle can see. When are you voting or?
I missed it.
Okay. All right, anybody voting against it? Against sending the letter to Monoma County Commissioners? You have one voting against, is that correct? Or is that a legacy hand, Jonathan? Okay, legacy, wonderful. Anybody abstaining?
So what we need.
Suen is abstaining. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Corbin and Alana, for your drafting skills and help.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Casey. Wrangling cats. All right. Thank you so much. Anything else from the Board of Affairs Working Group? All right, moving forward to the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group. Is there any statements you would like to make or any questions that the board has?
Lauren was going to give a brief update on Darcel. Which
All
she's
right.
showing as Joey, which I will rename.
Yeah, I'm actually Joey right now, sorry.
Thank you, Lauren. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me share my screen here. Can you see the drawing right now
Yes.
on the screen? Okay, so we've been working on the project to activate Darcel since 2022 now. Portland Bureau of Transportation is going to wrap up the demolition in this coming winter, and we're hoping to activate and open an interim park late summer of 2024. You know, it's been closed for 5 years, and we've been working with the Center for Public Interest Design at Portland State University and also with the Portland Parks Foundation. We had a pretty active about 3-month engagement called Back to Square One that engaged about 1,000 Portlanders and gave ideas about what they wanted their park to be. Since that time, we have a community partner that's Downtown Clean and Safe. They're the programming lead for the park for this interim phase, and we're calling the interim phase 3 to 5 years. And we have a memorandum of understanding to solidify that. We're now working on a refinement of the design. I'm going to show you a preliminary design and then kind of where we're at now. So this is where we came from. We have this space being between Washington Park, Harvey Milk, and Southwest 9th as our potential space. The original concept was to have a space that was extremely flexible and could accommodate a lot of different events. So this purple area was proposed to be crushed gravel or asphalt. At the moment, it's moving towards asphalt. This was to be some kind of elevated stage area. This area was grass to take up the elevation difference across the site. And then this was hardscape to kind of respond to the new development diagonally across the street. And then when we were working with the center for the conceptual ideas about what the park could be, the Center for Public Interest Design came up with some ideas of potentially expanding food carts and dining. That kind of fell by the wayside, or expanding lawn and dedicated event space. That's an idea. Expanding a skate park area, or roller skating. Here's an idea of what it could be. And then now they've started to refine that. And so this is where we're at now. You can see a stage in this location here. It is potentially fenced all the way around, but it has large openings in the fence, and I'll show you that in a minute. This is probably a sailcloth covered area of the, what we'll call the programming area. Then there's steps going up and an elevated platform and paved area up above. And then this area is a potential dog entertainment area. So on the perimeter, you can see some green spaces. That's the planted area. We've preserved 3 of the large trees in the area, and there's street trees all around. And then this shows you the facade with swing gates and the use of some of the architectural pieces that are available from what was originally Nato Parkway that we have gotten through Prosper. So it should be pretty interesting. This is woven wire mesh fencing. And then the actual, almost we're looking at accordion gates that would go here, but then they'd fold back into the columns. So you wouldn't even see them most of the time. So that's my update.
Thank you, Lauren.
Any questions on that?
Roberta, do you have a question?
No, I had a comment about the letter from before.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Do
Okay,
you want
it's
to?
kind of blending. I'll wait, I'll let folks comment on this item and then you can come back to me.
Great. Sue-Ann, go ahead.
Just a question regarding what's the opportunity to maybe utilize that opportunity as the fence around the site to be open up for maybe artists' ideas to make it into art fence or something that's a little bit less dull.
So they have lots of different ideas about that, and have looked into several different things. At the moment, this is where they've landed, but part of the idea of the whole idea of this square is to have it as an interim design. And so this should inform what happens in the long term, the permanent design as we go forward. So that's definitely a consideration. Thanks for that comment. David?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Lauren. I've been lucky to, kind of watch this progression of the design of this thing, and it's nice to see it moving forward. But I think, again, I'm still concerned about the fence. Like, fencing off a park is still a challenge. And I think the way that it's being depicted in some of these drawings, it's like we've got these beautiful little aerial views that look exciting. And then we have these very flat lands and elevations with no people on them, so that we don't know how big it is, how tall it is. And I think there's a disconnect between what that's really going to feel like in terms of a full block, fully fenced. And I think in order to communicate that to the, Gen Pop, so to speak, I think some additional 3-dimensional views of really what that space and park will feel like with that, if it's a 6-foot tall fence, around the perimeter. I love the idea of using some of those kind of artifacts, which would be really fun. But I'm still a little concerned personally about the fencing of a public space.
I'll check back in with Russ Swanson about the potential for 3-dimensional renderings too. Those are
Lauren.
great comments.
Thank you. Matt, go ahead.
Thanks for your presentation, Lauren. Looks exciting. What's the chandelier? Is that like a signature piece, signature attraction?
So what's this right here?
The chandelier that I saw in the plan.
This chandelier. Let me share again, and then maybe you can help me. Are you talking about this?
No, it was on the overhead plan. Chandelier? And the
Oh, yeah,
that dashed circle. Yeah.
So that's one of the things. So this is a stage here, and one of the things you're talking about is a chandelier that would be reflective of Darcel.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Very nice. Thanks.
Perhaps a disco ball.
Patty.
Lauren, can you we talked a lot about the fence, so I'm kind of I'm following David. Can you remind me why we think we need a fence? Besides security,
so-
because I don't think that's gonna work, but anyway.
Right, no, that's exactly right. So, our partner Clean and Safe, does not want to come into a partnership with us without having the fence in place, because they don't feel like they can maintain it, in the condition that they would like to be able to maintain it in. Also, the, surrounding businesses would like it to be fenced so that it is always, clean. And so our challenge, as you pointed out, is to try and make it feel open and accessible. But at 10 o'clock at night, when we close down the park, you know, making sure it's safe at night.
You, Alana.
So I understand that there has been a lot of conversation about the fence. But that is the first thing that jumped out at me too, seeing this for the first time today. And coming off of conversations a few months ago about fields and wanting to be careful in all of our partnerships on fields to keep them open to public use at any time that they are open and to not close them off. And hearing from park staff, maybe not totally solid hard line there, but a pretty strong opinion about not closing off spaces to the public, and then seeing a proposal with a literal fence around it, and hearing from an organization operating downtown that they can't maintain this space without it when Pioneer Courthouse Square is maintained without a fence seems really problematic to me. And I just want to put that out there.
Todd, do you want to?
Do you want to respond to that?
I just wanna highlight that, so park closures normally are, it's 5 AM. Most of our parks open at 5 AM and they close at 10 or midnight.
Yes.
So people technically should not be in parks after those hours. We do have facilities where we have fences around them that are closed. For instance, some of our stadiums, even during normal daytime hours, they're actually not open. Walker Stadium's not open, like where the Portland Pickles play. In that conversation, and I'm not arguing with you, I just want to share like the background,
I
like
appreciate the
on Grant,
perspective.
like our argument there with the Grand Upper Field was during the times of 5 AM to 10, it needs to be open, except when it's permitted. And actually the after hours, we're okay with them closing. And so from a like a policy perspective, we do have facilities that are closed overnight.
So
And that
are
do
those
have
fences
fences.
only going to be closed between 10 at night and 5 in the morning?
Do you want to share anything more about that? But that's my understanding right now. Go ahead.
That is right. That's our understanding.
Otherwise, it's open.
Yeah.
Director Long.
I just also want to clarify that we already have an MOU with them. And that the design is happening now. So the claim that they won't partner with us without a fence, I think is not true. Because they are already partnering with us because we have a signed agreement. So I just wanted to be on the record on saying that. And then my question about the letter was if you could clarify who you want copied on it,
Okay,
that would be great. It doesn't have to be now, but maybe let Michelle know.
thank you. And I want to continue this conversation on the fence.
Of course.
My concern is that it's a slippery slope towards privatization. And so the sticking point is that it's open unless it's permitted. And so how many hours can it continuously be permitted before it's no longer a public space for people to expect public use from it? And how is that going to be managed if that fence is put in place? Do you have like community hours that during those times, even if, Bill Gates came down and said he wanted to give you $50 million to close off the park for 6 hours, that you would have a stipulation that no, it can't be closed down during the day. I think that is where I have found the slippery slope, where municipalities as well as Parks and Rec needs money, permitting is a possibility. It's permitted so much that it's no longer public use, or it's no longer perceived as a public park. And what mechanisms or policies or rules and regulations can you put that in place to keep it as an open space? And how restricted are you willing to get to it, get with the permitting is my question.
I don't have a copy of the MOU that happened between Clean and Safe and Parks, but I know we can get that, so we could answer that question of how many events they can have a year, or we can have a year. So we can get that information for you. But we also, in other negotiations that I've been in with Dylan about the same situation, where we're trying to, like for Tom McCall Waterfront, for example, we're trying to limit the number of events that can happen there. They do have a limit on that in their MOU. So I would imagine he also does in this case.
Yeah, I would love that information because it becomes a pay to play situation. But did you want to add to that?
So generally, we want as many events in these spaces as possible, and we want them to be free and open to the public. So there's different types of events that we have, some where they're ticketed, where you have to pay for a ticket, thanks to the Blues Festival, right? And that's where there's a limited number of events that we have those in Waterfront Park. And then on the other end of the spectrum, it's like where we have most places, people pull a permit, it's an open free event. You can show up, you can walk through, you can hang out, you can watch, you can participate. And then someone's sponsoring it normally, right? Or maybe it's just a low tech event that doesn't cost much. And so that last example is what we're hoping we're gonna have a lot of.
So
And so-
publicly open.
That's right.
events.
And so I don't think we've gotten that level of detail for this location, but it's a great comment and it's something that we could like work with Clean and Safe on to be more descriptive of like the types of events we're gonna have are free and open to the public. Think Pioneer Courthouse Square. Periodically, they have a concert that's ticketed, but for the most part, the site is open to the public. And I expect that's kind of the target we're going for here.
I think if we can keep that policy, I think people will feel comfortable with it, but you know, fences are always a weird.
Yeah.
It's tricky. Patty, I saw your.
Sorry to keep harping on this, but
No.
it's in this location, I mean, will a fence really keep anybody out? That's, to me, that's one thing. I mean, I think if you want people not in that park, we have to have security because it's a different part of the city. And I don't think unless you have a really tall fence, that will keep people out. Seems like a false sense of control this that goes on in the park. I just don't buy. I think it's a false sense of insecurity without it becoming like this barrier or separation, public private.
Thank you, Patty. Sabrina.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with what the concerns around the fence. And I think, even if we were to talk about policies, I think, we might be able to keep track of that more than the general public and the community. And people will, act in the way of, oh, there's a fence there. Oh, it's closed. Oh, it's open. I'm just going to stay out of that space because I don't know. And so I think that that's really important to know because I'm sure most people don't know the policies. And so we have to really look at how that fence is going to be perceived by the public, regardless of the intent.
Thank you, Sabrina. Adrian.
Yeah, this is a really tough one. We've been talking about it in Ludwig on a few sessions, and I'm wondering if we have data, Lauren, on the other really problematic spaces. Like I'm just thinking of North Park blocks, as an example, waterfront, in terms of what we're dealing with cleanup. I mean, I assume that what we're really talking about is camping, human waste, needles. It would be helpful to sort of get more specific. And the thought that I had as you were talking is, could we agree to some sort of pilot with them? Of trying a couple of things that would then sort of inform the next more permanent steps. I mean, this is such a problematic, endemic square block. That's, I think, what the struggle is. We all don't want a fence, right? Anyway, yeah, that's kind of my thought and question.
So Adrian, what does that look like to you? What, can you elaborate?
Well,
little
like a
bit more?
pilot. So, really having the rules out there, is it going to be increased enforcement? Is it going to be increased, either rangers or police presence? So more signage, more partial fencing that's attractive. I love the comment about art. I realize we might not want to do that on a temporary basis, that, you even have a competition for partial fencing. That's art fencing that could then, go into a second phase. And then with that option where if it just becomes absolutely impossible, you could choose to close gates later on. So either you start one way and then try the other, or vice versa. So it's just a thought.
Hey, Lauren, I can help you
Yeah.
on this.
Okay.
So what we're discussing with Clean and Safe is to provide free additional janitorial and security services for this block, in addition to what we would provide as base services as Parks and Recreation. So for instance, we have 2 park rangers for the whole city overnight, where Clean and Safe has staff downtown overnight. And so they would be the ones that would be helping enforce that the fence was not breached. And they would help be basically acting as the city's agent in enforcing park rules. The park was closed. So, and I think to Adrian's point, at the end of the day, the city of Portland owns the property. We're receiving, if you want to think about it, in-kind contribution from a private party. And I'm sure if we want to terminate that relationship and take over those responsibilities, we probably could. And so we're at the beginning of that building of that relationship. So I don't know if you want to call it a pilot, but I think at the end of the day, we probably have the right to terminate the partnership because it's an in-kind contribution, basically. Where there's a mutual understanding of interested parties and wanting to make this a success, and they think this is what's necessary to be a success.
So I have maybe a very rudimentary question. I don't think it's been asked, and I don't know if I hadn't have a chance to see this. How much is this fence? How much it's cost? How much is the fence? And is it? Because this is a permanent fence. This is not like a chain link fence that they can put up and put down. It's gonna be an established fence, so we're talking.
Right, we don't have that answer yet. This is just in the design phase, so we don't have a cost estimate yet for the whole park.
And these are all, if you want to put it in quotes, temporary improvements. This is not the long-term design of Garcelle 15 Plaza. This is the interim. But interim and Portland Parks land can be 5 or 10 years. Yeah,
but I guess the
3 to 5, says the director.
So just some of the work that I have done in researching, unless there's gonna be people there 24/7. If people don't want that fence to be there, they'll show it. I mean, I've seen full-on mattresses get lobbied over fences and they'll do that anyway. So I would love to know how much this fence is and like how fortified it is. I mean, I can't really tell from the images. Because it could be very intimidating to what Sabrina was saying, that people will see that might not consider it a public park. Or it might become a lightning rod for people's ire around losing public space through a fence, and it might draw a negative reaction. But I would love to know the cost of the fence, and if the fence wasn't going to be put up, what are the options?
When do we think we'll have cost estimates, Lauren?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, actually. I would guess they'll finalize the design in the next month or so. And so I would think at that point we may have a cost estimate, but I can ask Ross and get back to you.
Thank you. I think we're gonna probably have to end it with Sue-Lin and Adam. Last question. Oh, Milana.
This block has always been very open to the public, like, not how it played out, but since now it's renamed, the new name, I wonder what is capturing the spirit of Garcelle. I don't think that's what she wants, as a fence, but more importantly, the public, when they come to this block, they don't see, oh, this is just an interim, or this is permanent. They react. You react to something that's very much, do I like this? Do I not like this? And if we are afraid that the place is going to be trashed, and try to do something that's more creative, maybe the ground is the place where we can do something very artistic, creative. I don't know what. I think we have to bring some creativity here that empower artists to, as mosaic, a sculpture garden, something that is totally a fresh light of this block. The fence is, if you look at Gramercy Park in New York City, and it's like, oh, you're wealthy, so you have this fence in the park. But the fence that we're gonna use here, it's like cattle fence. It's so odd to have this in the city, middle of the city, and it's a Portland public space. It's a park space. It projects poorly for me.
Yeah, is this the representation of the fence?
Is that the TriMet, what they use, isn't that their fence?
This is the fence that I think that they were speccing, this type of fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look
It's
welcoming.
not gonna-
I have Sue Lynn and then Adam.
I'll be quite quick. Director Long, I saw your note about the time check. Just a quick clarification question. I think my internet cut out when y'all were going over this, but did I hear, Todd, you mentioned that part of this land is donated from a private party? Would you mind just repeating that for clarification?
So Clean and Safe provides enhanced janitorial and security in downtown Portland and part of it. And this block is in that same area where they provide services. And so they've offered to increase the janitorial services on the park block as well as security on the park block, of which they normally don't do. So it's publicly owned property, so the offering is in-kind services.
And was that offer only if there is a fence, or did they agree to that just in general?
They are interested in having a fence.
Are they potentially interested in coming to talk to us?
I don't know. Did you ask?
Is that something the board is interested in? Adam, are you interested in having them come here to have a conversation with us?
We'll follow up on that. I don't think it's super germane to our agenda today, but it's something to think about.
Thank you, Adam. We're gonna close this down with Alana.
So I hear the importance in these negotiations of a fence. I think to me, the fence itself is less of a big deal as what that might be indicative of in what is happening in the space. And I'm hearing about private security. I am seeing a fence that doesn't look welcoming. I get the importance of keeping folks who don't have anywhere else to sleep out of a space that then makes it harder for people to use at other times. But I also think when you put a fence up, you've got a nice place to lean against when you're trying to figure out where to rest for the evening on the sidewalk. So I don't know that it necessarily solves all of the problems that we want it to solve. And I guess I would just say that as you all as staff continue in these negotiations about what the design looks like, I hope that although everybody at the table has the same goal in mind in terms of having a space that is as usable as possible, and that there are usability arguments for and against a fence, that we remember that only one party at the table has the best interest of the public in mind, and that is us and you all. And I hope that you could bring to those conversations a broad look at what is going to make this space be inviting and welcoming, and not make decisions that are not actually going to help. Again, I think there's arguments for and against events, or and against private security. And that we also take into account the fact that that part of downtown has been rough, but is changing. And what's changing around it too, and we need to be looking at what the future actually holds and not the
Thank you, Amon. So we are continuing. With the Financial Sustainability Working Group, are there any questions for the group? Or does the group have any statements it would like to make?
I just want to note that we had the first of our BAC meetings that staff set up. So the deck from that will go out in next month's board packet. The December BAC has been canceled, so the January one will be the second one, and then we'll have the third one in February. But that is moving forward, organized by Maya Spencer. Did I say her name right? Yes.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks.
All right, moving to Community Engagement Working Group. Are there any questions of the working group? Or does the working group want to make any statements? Keep that silence. All right, Programming and Recreation Working Group. Are there any questions for them? Or working group, would you like to make a statement?
Only thing is that we are defining priorities and on track to have our first meeting in January.
Great, thank you so much, Adam. All right, so that concludes the working group reports. Moving to the Portland Parks Foundation report, Jessica Green.
Hi, everyone. Michelle nicely sent a very late report today. I don't know if any of you had a chance just to read it. Mainly the exciting piece of news is that we actually submitted 90% drawings for the elk today to Portland Water Bureau. We had a nice briefing at Historic Landmarks Commission yesterday related to the designs, and tomorrow Portland Water Bureau and PPF will be presenting to Portland City Council on an ordinance to put the construction work out for bid in 2024 once the design work is done and gifted to the city. So if anyone wants to attend that exciting moment, that will be tomorrow. And then that's sort of the big exciting piece. We're chugging along on kind of the details of our playground trifecta campaign and just focusing on end of year fundraising.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And moving, are there any questions from the board? Sabrina, go ahead.
Yeah, I did skim the report and I saw that it says that the leadership transition is in the middle of this process. Stay tuned. What does that mean? Is there a recruitment out or?
The recruitment committee is still figuring out next steps. So they've met, but there's not anything out yet. So I don't really have anything to report on that at the moment. But actually I am glad that you brought it up because I did skip something. So traditionally we have an ex officio member from the Parks Board on the PPF board, similar to how I'm here today. And one of the unique pieces about that position is it is a voting member on the Portland Parks Foundation board. So I would love to work with Parks Board leadership on identifying someone who would like to participate as an ex officio member starting in 2024.
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much, Jessica. Great. So Next on our agenda is the Parks Levy Annual Report with Claire Flynn. And just to let you know, we might have to take a break at 6:45 for public comments. If you want to go ahead and present, and I would encourage you to fully present and then open up the floor to the board for any sort of clarifying questions from the report.
Sounds great. All right, I will share my screen here. All right. Thank you all and good evening. My name is Claire Flynn. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the levy coordinator for Parks. My presentation today will cover the fiscal year 2022 to 23 Parks Levy Annual Report and the materials that you received in advance. So the full report, the executive summary, and the oversight committee report will be presented to City Council tomorrow for their review and hopefully their acceptance. So for any new members, the Parks Levy or Parks Local Option Levy was approved by voters in November 2020 to ensure that Portland Parks and Recreation can operate Portland's park system and programs that provide recreation services to all, as well as help conserve parks, nature, and clean water. It's a 5-year operating levy, which is enabling us to maintain and improve operational, but not capital services. And it supports 1/3 of the Bureau's operating funding. Year 2 of the Parks Levy has built upon the foundations that were laid in year 1, and progress has been made on all 15 commitments. And the Bureau's report and executive summary, as well as the Parks Levy Oversight Committee's report, covers the full fiscal year 2022 to 23 and shares key actions taken in this past fiscal year to support recreation for all, protecting and growing nature, and community partnerships. So each year we publish this annual report that shares key actions, financials, and performance measures for the 15 commitments that were included in the Parks Levy ballot title and explanatory statement. So we very clearly match the sections of the report to the ballot language. Throughout the report and in this presentation, we include interviews and stories of staff, partners, and participants to show the impact of the Parks Levy. And tonight I'll share some key highlights of how the Parks Levy is delivering on each of the 15 commitments made to voters, and we'll save some time for Q&A at the end. So at the top of each of these subsequent slides that I'll share, I've included the commitment language from the voters pamphlet so you can see what we're kind of aiming for. So the Bureau was successful in preventing further cuts and closures to ongoing recreation programs and operating facilities in fiscal year 2022 to 23. In year 1 of the Parks Levy, the Parks Levy funding allowed for PP&R to reopen pools, community centers, and restart programming following the impact of COVID. So then in year 2, continued operational funding from the Parks Levy is supporting programs, facility staff, and day-to-day maintenance that keeps operational community centers and pools open. The Parks Levy continues to provide revenue support to help stabilize the parks budget. For example, additional financial support for the Summer Free-for-All program is helping increase participation by community partners and reduce service cuts. Morgan Spriggs and Emily Lighthype, the co-founders of Black Swimming Initiative, share their story about the impacts the Parks Levy funded partnership with PP&R, which is helping to continue to provide recreation programs, offering swim lessons and water safety courses. We used Parks Levy funding to deliver a variety of recreational programs. PP&R safely provided swim lessons, camps and classes, fitness in the park, pop-up concerts, free lunch and play, and other popular programming. Despite challenges, much like those experienced across the country in hiring for swim instructors, we increased the number of swim lessons participants and hours worked by swim instructors. Overall, total estimated attendance increased, and we also served more than 99,000 free meals throughout the year to youth and families through free lunch and play, Sun Community Schools, and after-school programs. The Access Pass was introduced in fall 2022. We provided $3 million in financial assistance to over 15,000 unique users. And this is significantly more than the Bureau has provided in the past. Prior to the levy, only about $565,000 in fee reductions was provided. And this is a really big step towards reducing costs as a barrier and making sure that recreation can truly be for everyone. We interviewed PPNR staff Amy Kelly and Zoe Allen Lewis, who provided free programming at Stephen Creek Crossing, which is a Home Forward property. And they shared the impact of offering free and reduced cost programming, specifically highlighting how beneficial free programming can be to reducing costs as a barrier. With more than 11,000 acres of land that include 8,000 acres of natural areas, the Bureau's maintenance and enhancement of natural features is essential to climate resilience, protecting water quality and habitat, and ensuring ecological health in urban areas. With the Parks Levy, PPNR added a new stewardship coordinator position to our soft surface trails team to engage with volunteer groups that have a more advanced level of understanding around trails. And we also expanded and improved signage and trails in Gabriel Park. The Parks Levy also allowed for the hiring of a full-time ongoing coordinator role focused on supporting forest parks and the Renew Forest Park program to manage and improve the unmet ecological infrastructure and access needs of Forest Park. Kush Agarwal, a frequent natural area stewardship volunteer, gives back by volunteering to care for our natural areas and create habitat for local plants and animals, get outside and learn new skills. In fiscal year 2022-23, the Bureau increased the number of environmental education participants from the previous year and continued to engage and provide services to communities of color and children experiencing poverty, including expanding culturally specific and bilingual nature education programming. And we interviewed Amira and Zoya, two youth conservation crew members who share their experiences connecting with nature through community gardens and maintaining green spaces. The youth conservation crew provides employment opportunities for a diverse population of Portland area youth, and crews protect, restore, and manage Portland's parks and natural areas while developing job skills and exploring environmental career paths, which is a key program that helps increase opportunities to connect with nature. A large portion of Parks Levy funding was spent on enhancing park maintenance and cleaning parks. To date, the Parks Levy has helped create over 80 new maintenance positions that will assist with operational park maintenance, including emptying trash cans, cleaning and checking restrooms, and preventative maintenance and repairs, and more. The increase in preventative work orders means that more work is being done proactively, which helps limit declines in asset condition and keeps more assets open to the public. And open restrooms were visited regularly for daily checks and cleaning. As the city continues to face many challenges, park spaces are no exception. So increased use of restrooms, garbage cans, and open spaces can also increase maintenance needs. The benefits of Portland's tree canopy are not distributed equally, with less tree canopy east of the Willamette. The Parks Levy is helping increase holistic care for park trees, and for the first time ever, thanks to the Parks Levy, PPNR has the funding to care for park trees beyond just emergency maintenance. PPNR also continues to engage Portlanders in tree planting, educational events, and tree-related outreach. In this section, Robin Lish, a Home Forward property manager at Tamarack Apartments, shared their experience with our urban forestry team to host a planting event that engaged residents in tree planting and education, noting that everyone who participated in the tree planting event, from Tamarack residents to community members to volunteers, left that day feeling a greater sense of connection. In fiscal year 22-23, PPNR increased trees planted, planting almost 2,400 trees in priority neighborhoods, which are areas where canopy levels are lowest and where there are the largest inequities in urban canopy relative to race and income. Parks Levy funding also helped support the development of a new volunteer management software, which will support staff and provide better volunteer metrics for analysis. And additionally, the Bureau moved forward the project to upgrade the maintenance work order system, which will support our efforts to deliver equitable and efficient maintenance across the city. Additional internal efficiencies have been developed, including an internal urban forestry web app that will improve communication between work groups, which makes the decision-making process around tree planting much easier and will allow for more proactive collaboration with other PPNR teams to grow Portland's urban forest. There are two main elements of this commitment here: an oversight committee from a community oversight committee and a future performance audit. In fiscal year 22-23, the Bureau continued to be advised by the Parks Levy Oversight Committee. Mary Rubel is a member of that oversight committee and will present the committee's report to City Council at tomorrow's presentation. The committee meets quarterly and reviews information on progress towards the Parks Levy commitments, advises on transparency and communication, and receives topical presentations. While not a voting member of the Parks Levy Oversight Committee, Casey Mills attends the meeting and is a liaison between the Parks Levy Oversight Committee and the Parks Board, so thank you, Casey. You also received the Oversight Committee report as part of the fiscal year 22-23 report materials. And in that report, the Oversight Committee found that parks adhered to ballot language and recommended the continued use of the 15 commitments to and also to refine performance measures to speak to success beyond just adherence on the ballot language. For fiscal accountability, the committee encouraged the Bureau to continue tracking the use of the leveraged funding model at multiple levels, so by commitment, service area and work group, and line item. And then finally, they found the Bureau to be transparent and recommended enhanced transparency by sharing additional context for performance measures and speaking to service level impacts with and without the Parks Levy. In terms of the audit, to date, we have established our internal quality checks and controls with our finance team, and we are preparing to conduct the performance audit during year 3 of the Parks Levy as required by the ballot language. This commitment here is very closely tied to the overall theme of centering equity and is really about the how we do this work. Parks Levy funds supported things like community engagement, working with community partners and organizations who serve populations that PPNR is centering. Our community partnership program has continued to evolve and expand, granting funds to additional partner agencies and serving over 3,400 youth in fiscal year 22-23. Pamela Slaughter, a community partnership program grantee, and Veronica Agribon, a grandparent of a program participant, spoke to the impact of grant funding on people of color outdoors. And with PPNR funding, people of color outdoor can host more kids and expand programming to additional seasons. In fiscal year 2022-23, the Bureau successfully delivered park and recreation services to a wide variety of users and implemented initiatives such as early registration, community partnership program grants, and work order prioritization. We continue to refine the early registration pilot program, an effort to work with local partner organizations who serve the communities that the Bureau is centering to provide assistance for registration and accessibility or accessible registration materials. This year, based on feedback from the Parks Levy Oversight Committee, we also included workforce diversity and demographic measures related to the Parks Levy. Workforce diversity is part of this commitment, particularly in how in helping PPNR-centered communities see themselves in our Bureau's workforce. Workforce measures show how PPNR is moving forward towards a workforce that's representative of PPNR-centered communities. This is a high-level summary of how Parks Levy funding was spent in fiscal year 22-23. The full report breaks down spending further by both the 15 commitments, as well as lists out expenses by service area and work group. In the total, at the bottom, you can see the Parks Levy resources were able to bolster additional operating resources to increase services and activities and to meet voter commitments. Of the $74.22 million spent on services and activities, after fees and other revenue adjustments have been made, those Parks Levy funding supported about $25.47 million of that spending. Additionally, per City Council direction in the ballot referral, the Parks Levy was required to reimburse the Portland's Children Levy for the amount of compression impact that the Parks Levy caused the Children's Levy. So with that, the total amount of spending of Parks Levy funds this past year was $25.82 million. This parks levy spending in fiscal year 22-23 does leave a balance of about $22.17 million in fiscal year 22-23, and that will be rolled over to future years for parks levy eligible service delivery. And this underspending is a result of continued ramping up and bringing on new materials and supplies to facilitate additional capacity. And while the second year of parks levy saw underspending, we do anticipate that by year 3, we won't see any underspending in that year 3 as we continue to ramp up. And really by year 5, we expect that expenditures will outweigh revenues. Retaining that initial underspending in years 1 and 2 of the parks levy is critical to ensuring full service delivery over the life of the parks levy. So with that, we appreciate the opportunity to share the Parks Levy Annual Report and the Parks Levy Oversight Committee report with you. And I can open it up to questions.
Thank you so much. The board has the floor. Or the floor has. Yes.
Yeah, Sabrina.
Sabrina, go ahead.
Not a question, just a comment. That presentation was very informative. And it, is funding really great work. I've seen that firsthand in East Portland. And so, yeah, just wanted to say great work.
Thank you.
I'm gonna call myself. You will probably understand why I'm gonna bring this up. Disaggregated data around race. I would love to see some numbers on it, just to understand which community members are benefiting from it and community members that we still need to do some work reaching out to. Is there any way of getting that information?
For sure. Where you tell us the forum where you'd like it, because we have good disaggregated information about like workforce information, and depending on which line metric we have better, but we could bring it to the full board, we could do it at a subcommittee. We are going to talk about performance at the back. And that is a public meeting, and there could be an opportunity for other board members to come there. January 11th meeting actually is going to be heavily focused on performance.
Is it possible to just get a written report? Just like,
Sure,
just to
yeah.
supplement what you've already given us?
Yeah. Yeah,
I think
Sarah,
that'd be helpful.
Claire, right? We could send over something that we could get out for the next like board meeting packet. Would that be good?
Yeah. That'd be great.
And if I understood Dr. Corbin, you were interested also in who's benefiting, so like user disaggregated data, and our recreation team has been doing a lot of work with gathering data on kind of registered users. They actually gave a pretty in-depth presentation to, I think, our last Parks Levy Oversight Committee around kind of the disaggregation of who was utilizing, especially the access pass, and getting access that way. So there's quite a lot of sort of written materials and reports that they have produced around the prep data that they're gathering and the utilization of the access pass that's being funded by the levy.
Access pass, there is managerial staff, and it looked like it went down, but maybe it went up for one racial group and down for another one, and it's hard to tell when it's not separated.
Yeah.
So I would just appreciate that, just for more clarity on the levy. And then I have a follow-up question regarding levy money. So you say that this money goes towards programming, expanding programming. Does that also include helping community members pay for programming that they want to put on themselves, like community events? Because I've heard this quite a few times, that it's really expensive and it's out of a lot of community members' range to pay for it, but they still want to hold community events. Can some of this money go towards that? As in like a community event stipend to lessen the cost?
You want to go first, Sarah, or would you like me to talk about it?
Why don't you take a crack at it first? I believe the answer is that we are off, people do have the opportunity to request fee waivers or reduced fees for access of all different types. But if there's a more specific kind of outreach program around it, you might be able to speak to that.
Yeah. So I think a variety of different venues. Some of them might be at a community center where there's a special community event where we're maybe do a partnership where we waive maybe the rental fee. Another one might be if it's a community event that has overlap with our mission and somehow it's a parks and rec and partner event where then maybe the director is waiving what normally would be a fee. The Office of Government Relations actually is supposed to be waiving fees for Indigenous community events. So they make the determination of which events are qualified, and once they say that, then we waive the fees. So there's a variety of different kind of entry points. I think the other one that kind of work in progress still is where we're giving out community grants. And so then they're providing programming through their organizations. Doesn't always go with a fee waiver, but maybe they're using our facilities. You know, that's the other thing. So
I was like literally gonna say in the community grants, and that's at about 1.5 million, so it's not insignificant. So
And that's purely from the levy, or is that a combination?
purely from the levy.
And if community members are interested in applying to these money, where would they go?
So when we have the grant window, we put that out as kind of a request for grant applications. And otherwise, if someone wants to have a community event, they really should just come into our customer service center, which is at Parks, explain the event and that they're requesting, you know, a partnership with Parks and that they would like to make a free. Again, this goes to your earlier comment. It's a lot easier for the director to make the determination if it's a free, non-commercial, open public event, then it's a little easier for us to partnership versus like someone's doing a fundraiser for their private nonprofit organization and then they're asking for a fee waiver.
Especially if they've got corporate sponsorship on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes it more complicated.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Any questions from the board? Great.
Yeah, I was just gonna encourage folks to, it's a lot of material, but if you dig into the last few pages, like that's where the gold is. Where where the data and the numbers are. I mean, the stories are very uplifting and informative and, you know, sort of reminds you why we do this work. But the last couple of pages is really, really telling the impact. And thank you to Sarah and to Claire for your work in this area. We really appreciate it.
Alana, go ahead.
I just want to add thanks as we go into conversations about renewal levy. Having this type of information to share, I think is so important to be able to really prove the case to the public about why it's so critical to have the levy and to continue to have the levy. So thank you for taking the staff time to put this together because I know it is not a small undertaking.
And thank you to you all for it's like Director Long said, it's a long report. So thank you to you all for taking some time to review it. And yeah, the appendices have a lot of great information in it. That's kind of the nitty gritty, but it's nice to know that it doesn't just go sit on a shelf, that people are seeing it and hearing it.
Bonnie.
Thank you. Claire, thank you for a really thorough report. Question I have with respect to expansion of programming. You know, one of the concerns generally is, you know, capacity for recreation programming generally, particularly aquatics. And, you know, particularly with the fact that we're operating with fewer pools. And I know we have workforce related issues. In terms of goals for expanding recreation access in that way. Number one, are there goals? Number two, are the limiting factors more workforce related, capital facility related, a combination of the two, or other factors?
You want me to take a crack at this? I can start. So combination of both. We have a goal of having every Portlander with 3 miles of full service community center. We're gonna make a lot of headway on that by having North Portland Aquatic Center built in Northgate Park. That will get us a long ways to getting that coverage. However, you bring this important point up all the time, right? It's like 3 mile service area, but we have different densities, right? And the city continues to grow. So having that coverage, we know there's generally we're not meeting an industry standard of the number of laps that we have available for public use, even just not in Parks and Recreation, but like all of the public pool facilities. So we know we have a long ways to go in this community to build more aquatic centers, of which Portland Parks and Recreation should be important player, but not the only one. Todd's personal view, we need our school districts to be partners too. And then on the flip side, like labor, right? And so Director Long said it earlier. I think we have a
I think Bonnie
very,
was out of the room.
oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
So we talked about aquatics a little earlier about, we really had a breakthrough about giving better, more competitive wages to our aquatic staff. And so we feel, at least now in the coming years, we're going to be competitive to be able to recruit the number of people we need for the physical capacity that we have, so we can really staff up. And we're talking about like 700 people that we're hiring every summer just to do swim lessons, lifeguards. That's kind of ballpark our number, right? And so we think we're on track for that part now. And with the Parks Levy, we can cover that gap, and we should be able to reduce cost as a barrier. I know the director's working on a 2nd grade swim lesson thing that we're gonna be able to maybe announce in the coming weeks, which will be awesome to maximize like during the day use time. So maximizing our full capacity. But like eventually we're gonna have to build more pools, right? And so I feel like we're optimizing what we have, but kind of once you build Northgate, the next barrier really is building more pools.
Right.
And keeping the ones we have open, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that. And I totally understand, you know, right at this time, you know, the capital facility issue is real, right? With the closure of Columbia and with the Northgate pools still several years away. What is our current, you know, we think about level of service generally quite a lot, right? You mentioned, you know, particularly the 3-mile radius for full service community center. Do we have a level of service goal with respect to at what age, what proportion of youth should be water safe in terms of ability to
Yeah, I would, it's a really good question. We don't, but a lot of the work that I did in New York City was around Learn to Swim programming. And a program that we had there really focused on 2nd graders and getting 2nd graders. We used to say drown proof because they don't really learn to swim, they learn not to drown. But it's a series of 1-hour lessons for 10 weeks. And so I've pitched to Portland Public, and the barrier here has always been getting the kids into the pool. So I pitched to Portland Public Schools several months ago the idea of a free 2nd grade swim, whereby they would get the kids to us and we would provide the lessons free of charge. And so we're moving forward with that dialogue, and as you know, as Todd mentioned, we know how many 2nd graders there are this year, right? We'll know how many, it fluctuates, but we'll know how many there are next year. And, you know, my hope is that we can at least increase our capacity and our ability to hit all 2nd graders every year. And that by doing that, we start an evolution of swimmers. And so I think PPS identified 17, 18, 19 schools that are interested in participating, which is really exciting. 500 students. Yeah. So
I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
I think it would be really important to think about this metric in terms of what proportion of 2nd graders, say, you know, can meet that drown proof standard, right? And then use that as your metric going forward, you know,
can we increase that by a couple percentage?
I just had to jump on it when PPS said yes. I was like, you don't need to talk about, send the buses. But no, I appreciate that. We'll definitely be thinking about that and I know that Maximo's got some aquatic staff who would be great in thinking about what that looks like and how to measure and how to keep track of that.
Alana, go ahead.
Director Wong, just because you brought up that program and we're talking about the levy, would that be levy funded or would we need to find another funding stream?
Levy funded. And honestly, I mean, I think that when we started talking about it, Maximo said the staff are already working, right? They're already on duty. We're not adding any staff. That is like, no one's swimming at 9 a.m. We've got early morning people who are doing their lap swim before they go to work. We're having teenagers who come as a part of a team after school. Then we have, but like that middle of the day period is like a sweet spot. So it's really sort of a non-brainer, a no-brainer. I think that the problem has always been transportation and getting parents to agree to have their kids leave school.
Follow up with that comment about transportation. Is there any way we can partner with TriMet in the Fox shuttle? And then just go and pick up kids, drop off and drop them back? Because the conversation when we had with at the Ventura Park, community outreach with a lot of immigrant families. But there are a lot of things that we do so well that they don't even, it's not registered on their head. They do this or something else. They didn't know, they're just so close to a park that they didn't even know I would take advantage of it. But if there's a way to tell them that there's a park shuttle that you can always pick up, drop off, I think you're gonna have a lot more kids who take advantage of it. And TriMet maybe it's a good partner.
Yeah, well, and we have been in conversations both with TriMet and PBOT initially around when Columbia closed. And we created the North Portland Pass as a way of understanding that, the next closest pool was at Matt Dishman. And that was still the ways from Columbia. And so we looked at a couple of different options. I think they had about 3 different options that they were looking at, of like bus passes, looking at shuttle opportunity, looking at ride share programs and different opportunities. And because of the various program and because of, the ages too, it was those conversations are continuing and stuff. And so what we did do was put together passes for the opportunities for North Portland pass users, of which people are accessing, and we're monitoring and doing reports to see how that's kind of showing up in our programs for usage. But at that time, there were some other pilot programs that those transportation agencies were exploring, looking at. They said, oh, this could be a potential to better further align. Let us continue working with our pilot pieces, and then we can make sure to kind of keep those conversations going, see where we can continue then to implement that where that opportunity exists.
And I think as one of a part of that investigation was looking at whether or not we could have a shuttle bus or like a 15 passenger van or something, and it was just exorbitant. And we couldn't count on people wanting to use it, but we would still have to spend, we'd still have that expense. So we did look into that. I think the passes are going well. I mean, if anything, we actually have abuse of people taking, getting passes and not actually utilizing
Passes
to
are
come to
going,
the pool.
people are going,
Yeah.
are utilizing them.
Yeah, they're taking passes, and whether or not they're coming to the pool is questionable, but yeah, we're still offering those.
Any other questions? I believe that is it. Thank you so much for providing this informational report. And it looks like we're opening it up for public comments. Are there any public comments?
I don't have any attendees.
All right. New business? See what's on here. All right.
I think they have a question.
Go for it. That's new business. Go ahead.
Business. Just a follow-up on the recent news about dog walker being attacked at Lower Hirsch Park. Is there something that Parks been able to ramp up some
Yeah.
security?
Yeah, I believe the park rangers have increased their presence at that park and patrolling. And I don't think there's been any incidents since that first report. I don't know if the rangers are a deterrent or if somebody defended themselves and was able to, curtail the future behavior. But yeah, we haven't heard any reports, but we did increase our.
Can we afford to have more park rangers, horses or bikes?
We've actually increased the park ranger program. I want to say more than doubled since I've been here. Right?
I don't know, I'd have to go back and count,
Yeah, it's
but
pretty.
it's been growing.
It's pretty.
Every year it grows a
yeah.
little more.
Yeah, so, and I believe that the police have horses at one point, they can give them away. And the rangers do have bikes, they can patrol on
They are
bicycles.
such good ambassadors.
Yeah, we
I
agree.
mean, just a general sense, we have 2 day shifts and then we have overnight shift and we have about 10 rangers on 7 days a week during the day shifts. So that's for the whole system. So we have big system, big city. So they really are trying to be proactive where they're patrolling, but at the same time, they're trying to respond to kind of hotspots or places where there's issues too.
So they're not stations, they're spawned based on.
No, they're out in the community during their shifts all the time.
They're driving and
Walking
walking and.
parks.
Yeah.
And we do have a call center, so a ranger dispatch, if someone wants to call in a concern or complaint or something, that they can reach the rangers by radio.
Thank you, Chris.
This is not new business, but I would be remiss if I did not have a comment just on what was being discussed in regards to Darcel Plaza. I just want to make an comment that it is unfair to categorize that Clean and Safe doesn't have the best interests of the community in mind. They have engaged with businesses and folks who live in this area. And we have not done this as a board yet. So to call them on that when we have not done that, we're basing our arguments on principle. No one wants to have a fence in any of our parks, I think. But we have to face the realities that we do have a backlog of maintenance that's over $600 million. And what happens after the capital investment is made for this park? Nobody wants a fence, but without a fence, what does this address the need for homelessness services and supports? I think we heard that concern, but is that in the purview of the Parks Bureau? There's money for this on the county level and the city level that can address this need from 10 a.m. to 5 a.m. I think that was also some of the concern. There's the funding that's unspent there. We also have recreational spaces that are locked at night, like our recreational centers. The plans for this space include a lot of different recreational areas that's beyond a park. When we look at Delta Park, they have fences around their sports areas to try and maintain those areas. At Powell Butte, there's gate and barriers for people to drive in there. There's also natural barriers at other parks, so people aren't using that space and don't have the same level of activation from 10 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. As a member of the LGBT community, I don't think Darcel would want a fence, but she would also not want the space to be potentially defaced every single day. That was meant to honor her. She created a safe space inside for the community and really was a sibling to a lot of folks in the community and raised them up. And so I think it's also hard for us to speak on behalf of what Darcel or the LGBTQ community would want on a board unless we've engaged them. And I know that Clean and Safe in the plans for this has. And so if we are going to continue to make comments on this and discuss this as a board, I think it would be great for us to have that dialogue with them, with the public engagement that they have done, knowing that we all have the goal in mind to create a lively space for community use for all folks to be able to use as a park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you interested in having them come here for a statement? I asked that earlier, and I just want to make sure that we can get that on the record.
I think so, yes. I just needed some time to process
No, it's
everything that
absolutely fine.
was said. Yeah.
I'm glad that we have an open forum for you to speak your mind. Director Longman.
So, recently the commissioners made some, funding allocation decisions around SDCs. And I just wanted to alert the board that over the next few months, you'll see press releases that go out, announcing these, investments. And so, we're not able to share the information in advance, but, just wanted to let you know that those will be coming. So.
And I'm going to open it up again just to see if there's anybody here for public comment. Anybody else would like to sing? This is our space. We don't get to talk very much as a board by ourselves. I have a comment and then I guess we adjourn the meeting. Do we have data on parks that have bus stops, has public transportation? Do we know what the reach is for a public transportation?
I'm sure that we have GIS data and maps that we can pull that information.
I was just wondering if we.
I don't know if we have it, but I'm sure that layer exists and we have the capacity to get that layer and ascertain that.
Because I think, I think what Sue Ann was saying kind of jogged something that I've been thinking about and probably know that I was working with my students over the last term and looking at different parks, and they were actually noticing that some parks don't actually have any bus stops, or the bus stops are so far away that it makes no sense to take the bus to get to the park. I would love to see which parks don't have bus stops next to it.
Can we add max stops? And I mean, there's
any sort of public transportation. It would be just to understand what the reach is, because we always talk about accessibility, and part of that is, how do you get there? Not necessarily just the 10-minute walk, but how do we get to these different services across the city? And then seeing how that can be made affordable for community members. And I'm seeing two hands. I see Allie and I see Bonnie. Allie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that, Corbin. I just want to say I'm both a board member and an alongsider in this situation where I lead accessible outings for the disability community in Portland Parks. And one of the hardest things for me to find is it's not just for me a question of which parks have public transit, but which parks with high quality habitat where you're actually accessing nature. It's not just a ball field or something central city, but what real ability for folks to get out into nature are accessible by public transit. And it's really, really few and far between. I can say I have done a lot of looking and I've talked to park staff, and even ones where there is public transit like Powell Butte, it's a very big hill that you have to get up to get there. So not necessarily accessible. You've got some that are not so bad like Crystal Springs or Whitaker Ponds or whatnot. But I would say if we're asking the public transit question, I would also ask what kind of parks and assets are people able to get to, and which ones aren't they able to get to, and what's the disparity there?
Thank you, Allie. Bonnie.
Yeah, I could not agree with Allie's comment more. And I also think that the other thing that's important is the presence of a transit station. It matters where those lines go, right? So I said it before with respect to from Columbia, if you give a bus pass, there's no direct route. We're dealing with a fixed route system for most people for TriMet, and there isn't a direct route from the Columbia neighborhood to Dishman. So you've got this bus pass, TriMet pass, you can go anywhere, but if you have to transfer twice to get from your location to your destination, I mean, that is a terrible burden for folks who are time constrained and resource constrained. So I think we need to think about that as well, because of this environment with fixed routes and, you know, given the TriMet system. I think that in addition to the types of experiences and types of parks, we need to think about where those routes are going. Thanks.
Ideally, each park should have some bus stop really close by or some transportation really close by. Because if anybody has ever taken little ones on a bus somewhere, and then they sit down for like 5 minutes and they drink a whole soda and then they need to use the bathroom, right? So there's like this whole thing, right? I have a lot of nieces and nephews growing up. Took them on a lot of nature walks in Rock Creek Park. But yeah, I would love to see if we can like engage this conversation on accessibility, especially with Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, and see how we can close some of these service gaps. So thank you so much. Anybody else? Last minute? Uh-oh, we might have to end the meeting. All right, well, thank you so much, board. We're gonna go ahead and adjourn. Meeting at 6:52.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Wow, great.